The Renaissance, a period of profound cultural, artistic and intellectual revival, spanned roughly from the 14th to the 17th centuries, with its epicenter in Italy. Marking the transition from the Middle Ages to modernity, the Renaissance was characterized by a renewed interest in classical antiquity, humanism, scientific discovery, and artistic innovation. The factors that led to the Renaissance were complex and multifaceted, involving a combination of political, social, economic, and intellectual developments across Europe. One of the foundational developments that contributed to the Renaissance was the decline of feudalism, the social and economic structure that dominated medieval Europe. Feudalism was based on the land-holding hierarchy, with kings granting land to nobles in exchange for military service, and peasants working the land in return for protection. However, by the late Middle Ages, several factors began to undermine the feudal system. Firstly, the growth of commerce and trade in Europe, particularly after the Crusades, led to the rise of a wealthy merchant class. Cities like Florence, Venice, and Genoa, which were pivotal during the Renaissance, became bustling centers of trade and banking. The prosperity of these cities allowed wealthy patrons to sponsor artists, scientists, and scholars, providing the financial resources necessary for cultural and intellectual growth. Secondly, the Black Death, a devastating plague that swept through Europe in the mid-14th century, caused significant social and economic upheaval. The plague killed an estimated one-third of Europe's population, leading to labor shortages and a decline in the rigid social structures of feudalism. Survivors of the plague often demanded higher wages and better living conditions, and many migrated to cities in search of opportunities, further contributing to the growth of urban centers. Another key event that played a crucial role in setting the stage for the Renaissance was the fall of Constantinople to the Ottoman Turks in 1453. As the capital of the Byzantine Empire, Constantinople had long been a repository of classical Greek and Roman knowledge. With the city's capture, many Greek scholars fled to Italy, bringing with them invaluable manuscripts and knowledge of ancient texts that had been preserved in the Byzantine Empire. The influx of these texts sparked a renewed interest in the study of classical antiquity. Italian scholars and humanists eagerly translated works by authors such as Plato, Aristotle, Cicero, and Virgil. This revival of classical learning laid the intellectual foundation for the Renaissance, as thinkers began to apply ancient wisdom to contemporary problems, moving away from the scholasticism that had dominated medieval thought. The rediscovery of ancient philosophical ideas, particularly humanism, which emphasized the value of the individual and the potential for human achievement, became a cornerstone of Renaissance thought. Humanism, a cultural and intellectual movement that emerged in the early 14th century, was one of the central developments that fueled the Renaissance. At its core, humanism promoted the study of classical texts, but it also emphasized the importance of education, critical thinking, and the potential for human progress. Humanist thinkers like Petrarch, Giovanni Boccaccio, and later Desiderius Erasmus and Thomas More rejected the medieval focus on theology and metaphysics, advocating instead for a return to the moral and ethical teachings of antiquity. Humanists believed that by studying the classics, individuals could cultivate virtue, wisdom, and eloquence, qualities necessary for good citizenship and effective leadership. This emphasis on human potential and individual achievement represented a shift away from the religious-centered worldview of the Middle Ages, allowing for a greater focus on secular subjects such as politics, history, and the arts. The intellectual environment created by humanism also fostered scientific inquiry and skepticism of traditional authority. Figures like Leonardo da Vinci and Galileo Galilei, inspired by humanist ideals, pursued knowledge through observation and experimentation, paving the way for the scientific advancements that would come to define the later Renaissance and the scientific revolution. The invention of the printing press by Johannes Gutenberg in the mid-15th century was arguably one of the most transformative events leading to the Renaissance. Before the advent of the printing press, books were laboriously copied by hand, making them expensive and rare. As a result, knowledge was largely confined to the elite and to ecclesiastical institutions. Gutenberg's movable type printing press revolutionized the production of books, making them more affordable and accessible to a wider audience. The spread of printed material, including classical texts, humanist writings, and scientific treatises, helped disseminate Renaissance ideas across Europe with unprecedented speed. Education and literacy rates improved, and for the first time, a large portion of the population could engage with new ideas. The printing press also contributed to the spread of Reformation ideas in the early 16th century, as it enabled Martin Luther's 95 Theses and other reformist writings to reach a wide audience. Another significant factor that contributed to the flourishing of the Renaissance was the patronage system, particularly in Italy. Wealthy families such as the Medici in Florence, the Sforza in Milan, and the popes in Rome played a crucial role in funding the arts and intellectual endeavors. The Medici family, for example, were influential patrons of many Renaissance artists, including Michelangelo, Leonardo da Vinci, and Botticelli. Their financial support enabled these artists to devote themselves to their work, leading to some of the most iconic masterpieces of the period. The Catholic Church also played a dual role in the Renaissance. On one hand, the Church was a major patron of the arts, commissioning works such as Michelangelo's frescoes in the Sistine Chapel and Raphael's frescoes in the Vatican. On the other hand, the Renaissance coincided with growing calls for reform within the Church, which eventually led to the Protestant Reformation. This tension between tradition and innovation, between faith and reason, was a defining characteristic of the Renaissance. Finally, the Renaissance was marked by a series of groundbreaking scientific discoveries and artistic innovations. In science, figures such as Copernicus, Galileo, and Vesalius challenged established beliefs and laid the foundations for modern astronomy, anatomy, and physics. In art, the use of perspective, anatomical precision, and techniques such as chiaroscuro and sfumato transformed painting and sculpture, making them more realistic and emotionally expressive. Artists like Leonardo da Vinci epitomized the Renaissance ideal of the universal man, or Renaissance man, a person skilled in multiple disciplines. Leonardo's studies of anatomy, engineering, and botany, as well as his artistic achievements, reflected the spirit of curiosity and intellectual exploration that defined the period. The Renaissance was the product of a confluence of events and developments, from the decline of feudalism and the rise of urban centers to the rediscovery of classical knowledge and the spread of humanism. The invention of the printing press, the patronage of powerful families and the Church, and advances in science and the arts all contributed to the vibrant intellectual and cultural life of the Renaissance. Together, these factors marked the end of the medieval world and the beginning of a new era of innovation and discovery that continues to influence modern thought and culture.